What it do, y'all? We here with some unique looks at the third house today. I want to start with siblings. A lot of folks say that siblings are related to the third house, and that is true. I want to go a little bit deeper as to why. Third, seventh, and 11th house are all air houses. So, they're dealing with communication and relationships. Now, the third house is the first and the earliest of the air houses. So, growing up with siblings that may be, and it's probably just not just siblings. It could be your parents too. The reason I say that is because the siblings in your household, your immediate family, they're the first people that you speak to and develop communications with, communications and relations and how you speak, and just it's the first form of communication and the first form of relationships. Something I was thinking of is mirrors. Gemini is the sign that's birthed out of the third house, and they say that Gemini is a sign of twins, or like the representation is twins. Something that I was dwelling on was a little bit of a deeper concept. I think mirrors are a product of the square between the 12th and the third house. Going along with that, I think the third house represents self and the other self. The reason I say that is because I also believe that the third house represents the environment. Now, I'm pretty sure y'all have heard of the concepts of certain I'm sure you have heard of the concept of the self and the outer self, or the environment is a projection of the inner self, and I believe that's heavily relate to the third house. The reason I say that is I also believe the third house relates to stimulation and certain receptors of the brain and chemicals of that. Something that came up was like sensory, like picking up. Like if you look at the word sensory, it can have like a double meaning. Sensors, as if like you're picking up something, or like a signal, or to censor, to block out and do the opposite, making you not pick up something, or leaving something out. I believe that third house is, surroundings and the process of surroundings. I believe third house is heavily on the intellect and how you process the forms. I believe that, third house is immutable. It's mutable. So the way I look at mutability is all encompassing. It's like everything. So I believe that the third house is a combination of the first and the second. So going back to processing your surroundings, what's in your environment, what's in your surroundings. You're gonna have people or bodies or vessels, which is the axis of the first and the seventh, and you have things or items, the second house. And where the third house mutability comes in is the combination of both. So in the third house, you're processing those things. You're processing the people, your siblings growing up, or people you see in your environment. And you're also processing things. You're processing the value of things. Third house is mutable, so you'll get many people and many things. So it's up to you to process and how you feel about those. even me saying that leads us into the fourth house, because once you process something, then you kind of see how you feel about it. For the majority of people, some people feel things first, then process it. But just keeping a general statement. The third house is the first mutable house, so I kind of say it's like cardinal communication. Third house deals with like early communication, so I believe it's like cardinal communication. A lot of Geminis and a lot of people with third house, or heavy third house, generally they may speak before thinking, or maybe if it's not speaking before thinking, it's just like being a expressive communicator, a bold communicator. They may not hold back. One thing you can look at, the third house, you can say that something I like to think of is like circuitry and electricity and a light bulb. You ever seen a lot of different shows, when someone gets an idea, something that's can be ruled by the third house, they represent it as a light bulb, and you can think of that as like stimulation, or like I think of like a brain being stimulated. If someone gets an idea, the energy goes up. And the third house is a masculine sign, or masculine energy. Speaking on the environment, I believe that the third house represents paths and different ones. Now I'm gonna get to the external, but I want to go internal. If the third house is the combination of the first and the second, you have a vessel and you have a set of values. Now what does that lead to? Now if you have a set of values, if the third house is a mutable energy, then I believe that third house represents pathways and the different types of paths you can take, because life is mutable. If you're a certain type of person, then there's so many paths you can take. You can take a path that's aligned to you, or you can deviate off of that path. So that's why I say that third house represents like pathways and different pathways you can take. Externally, I believe that third house represents neighborhoods, close surroundings. I believe that it represents roads, sidewalks, and walking and exploration. That third house, ninth house axis. But I believe that roads and sidewalks, that's kind of like one thing that I'm gonna do some more videos on. This is shared energies. I talked about this, I believe, in the previous videos. But a lot of things that you see in the physical are not just the domain of one house. A lot of things are like the combination of two energies. So for example, I say that roads, sidewalks, and neighborhoods are represented by a third house, and that's true, but not just the third house. I believe that those things are a combination of the third and sixth house, because think about it, what's the sixth house? It's like a day-to-day, just on a mundane, it's day-to-day activity. So the things that you're going to see in a day-to-day basis are roads, sidewalks, and environments. That's like, those are both mutable signs and mutable energies. And that's a video I'm gonna really be interested in doing. I believe that the third house is your psyche within the world, because the third house is 8th from the 10th. So if 10th represents the world you're in, the 8th from the 10th is the psyche within the world. That's why Gemini in third house represents the thoughts that you have. It's the mentality. It's your mental. Things that I think relate to the third house can be sensory, reception, a lot of things that deal with the intellect, nerves is also one thing that's a combination of the third and sixth house, in my opinion. um I'm trying to, trying to dwell on if the third or the sixth house represents the actual physical. I think nerves, I think the physicality of it is represented by Virgo in the sixth house, but I think the actual travel and the migration of a certain stimuli is third house. Um, for an example, let's say nerves. You have nerves. That's the sixth house. People can have dead nerves, but the actual communication between them, I believe that is the third house. So another example, let's say someone has a pain in their arm. Now, the nerves of the arm, or the nerves that are linked between, like the brain and the central nervous system and the arm, that's Virgo. It just exists in the physical. But the pain traveling through the arm or being picked up by the nervous system, I believe that's the third house. Third house is like communication, like it's the linkage between the things, and the sixth house can be the actual thing that the communication can travel through. That's why I also say that, I said earlier that roads and sidewalks can be a combination between the third and the sixth house. I also believe that cars can be represented by the third house. The reason I say that, if the third and the sixth house, can represent roads and sidewalks, I believe that the third house, like I said, is a combination between the first and the second. So it can be that, let's say you say a car. A car is like the vessel, or look, the car is like the second house. It's like a item, a thing. You in the car can be like the vessel, and you traveling anywhere can be either the third or ninth house axis. Overall, I believe that the third house represents communication in the first forms of communication and all the manifestations that can come out and deal with communications. Thank you for enjoying, and next vid will be the fourth house.